So what this is a lineal design of the different types of pencils that I use. Now I use Staedtler brand, which is a German pencil, and they have the certain markings on the end of it to tell me how hard the pencil is. So the way that this works is that HB is your basic number 2 pencil that you use to do math in school. So 9B is the darkest pencil that you can get. It's almost like charcoal. It's very, very crumbly. And then you go this direction and you go to the hardest pencil, and 9H is the hardest graphite, and it won't do a very dark line. So what I do is use 19 different kinds of pencils from HB to 9B and HB to 9H. So this is dead set in the middle. You'll get darker as you go this way, you'll get lighter as you go this way. My 3 pencils that I use more than anything are HB, 2H, and then 2B. And of course there's 3B, 4B, 5B all the way up, and then same thing with the H. So these are the 3 pencils that I always have my students get, because I will use the majority of those, and then there will be other times that I will use a darker B. So I do different strokes to do my realistic textures. The main one, especially for background, is called a feather stroke. And I take a 2H pencil, I hold it way back here, and I do what I call a zigzag. So I actually go up and down and up and down. But what I do is I slowly move my hand down and I do this zigzag and make a line that is all one texture and all one value. And I'll go all the way down the side of the paper at this zigzag. And basically, to slow it down, it's go down, back up, go down a little bit farther, back up, go down a little bit farther, back up. That way you won't have any overlapping lines. So I'll go all the way down here, and then I'll pick up my pencil, and notice I'm way back here, and I'm just using my fingers, I'm not using my whole hand. That way I have control on it. And then I'll go right next to that. I'll use the same pressure, because of course I've got my fingers on the same part of the pencil as the first line. And then I'll just do up and down and up and down, which is what I call the zigzag. And I'll go up and down and make a little bit wider line and go all the way down. And this is how I start my backgrounds. And I will give you an example of what happens if you don't do this. If you do, you're starting to do a background and you're using this same zigzag, except that you're moving it across the paper. And you can get, maybe a ½ inch or so, and you're trying to fill this back in. I go back and forth on it so that I can't see any white of the paper. So when you get done with that, then it's like you have to move down. So I'll bring the pencil down here and I'll start again. And this is what most people do when they're doing a background. So now they're going to try and match that first ½ inch or inch with the same pressure, the same pencil hardness, but you've got a overlap right here. And it's very aggravating to me as an artist to see that overlap all the way across a background. And again, I just start up at the top, I spin my pencil a little as I go, I slide my hand down, and I do all my motion in my fingers and bring it all the way down. And then I can keep this the same value, tonal value, as long as I hold my pencil at the same spot. I could make it darker if I choked up toward the tip, but I don't want to do that. I want to make this all one tonal value. So this strip is 3 layers of pencil. Started with a 2H, went to an HB, went to a 2B. If I wanted that even darker, I would go to 3B, 4B, and so on until I got it the darkest I want. The way that this works is that it will not turn shiny on you if you layer your pencils that way. I'll bring it down and then I'll loop it back up. So basically you're doing loops of oblongs, and you're going back up and going back down and going back up and going back down. This is called scrumbling. And so that's a magnified area of it. If I was to do it the way I normally do it, I start really, and I think circular. It's very similar to what I did here, except that I can make it a straight line, or I can curve it and bring it over this way. And then I just move my hand a little bit. But if I was to slow this down, I would be doing this, little loops. And I make basically a chain. And that way, when I shade into areas that are curved, like the inside of an eyeball, the inside of a tear duct, by the side of the nose, the nostrils, even a dog's nose, I can curve this and it is just a chain. So that's called scrumbling. And you can do it for going down this way. The zigzag is much easier to do a background. Scrumbling is something that I use when I'm actually working on faces, working on eyeballs, working on lips, working on anything that is curved. So the other stroke that I use frequently is called a feather stroke. And this is what I use for grass, and I also use it for hair. Hair, dog hair, horse hair, cat hair, anything like that. So basically, you hold your pencil about midway, and then you're going to, if this was hair, you would just do strokes like this. Now, the thing that you have to be careful of is sometimes when you do these strokes, because you're touching your paper, it's going to be darker at the top than it is at the bottom. So these are the feathers down here, and this is the top. So if I was to do something that was hair, I would be doing this very lightly and small, and then I would go back and overlap a bit to do more hair, and then I would do it like this down here, and I keep overlapping. I can go back in there with a nice sharpened pencil, and I'll go backwards from the bottom, and it will look like hair. And that looks much different than this. So this is more realistic as far as I'm concerned. So this is a feather stroke. You can also use a feather stroke for doing grass. So you just work up from the bottom, and just like if it was, this is the dirt, and then you would, this is like a darker pencil. I've got a 2B on here right now. And then if I wanted to give it some tonal variation, I go to an HB, hold it the same way, and start doing more grass. It gives it a light and a dark. Sometimes I'll actually turn my paper and do it so if the grass is growing up, I'll turn my paper upside down and do it this way. Because a lot of times that's easier for people to go down with the grass instead of up. And actually, for where I'm working on this piece right now, I actually have it too high. Normally this would be right here, and I'd be just doing this. But I thought I might work on this part too.